Today we are going to start with Basic Crochet 101. I'm going to show you how to read a yarn label, what information you need so that you know what size hook you need, what size yarn it is, and then we're going to move in. We're going to make a swatch just like this. We're going to have some foundation chains, a single crochet, some double crochets, and then we'll go back to a single crochet. So the first thing you want to know is when you're looking at your yarn, what supplies do you need? The label on your yarn will tell you everything you need. So right here, this one here, this is a Wool Ease. It's mostly acrylic. It's 20% wool and 80% acrylic. It is a weight of a 4, which is a real standard weight. Tells me here the ounces if you're going by weight for your project, how many grams. I usually follow the yards, 348 yards or 318 meters. Right here, it shows you what size needles to use if you're knitting or what size hook to use if you are crocheting. So it says here we need to use a J10 or a 6mm hook. So this is my O-Fire hook, and it tells me right here that it's a size J, 6mm. So this is the hook I'm going to be using. Now you can pull from the center or you can pull from the outside. Typically I like to pull from the center. It's just a personal preference. Now I've already got some yarn over here started. Hopefully it's going to be enough for my swatch. So I'm going to just put it over here in my yarn bowl so that it won't be running all over the place. Now for this swatch, we're just going to be doing a foundation chain of 20. So basically we're going 20 and then up. So it's somewhat of a perfect square. So the first thing you want to do is grab your yarn and you're going to make your starting or your foundation loop. And you want to have about 2 to 3 inches of a tail. You can do a little longer if you want to. So we're going to wrap it around our finger. The working yarn is going to be the yarn that comes off of the ball. This is our end piece. So we're going to take the end piece. We're going to wrap it around a finger. Just like so. We're going to take the working yarn, we're going to go through to make our starting loop, just like that. We're going to take our hook, put it inside of our loop, and cinch the yarn around our hook. Now to hold the yarn, you want to have good tension on the yarn. You don't want it loose because that's going to keep your stitches consistent. So, however you like to do it, I wrap my pinky around it and then my forefinger to hold it in place, whatever works for you. From here, we're going to chain 20, which is my foundation chain. So to do that, the hook is through the yarn. We're going to yarn over and pull that working yarn through, and that is your foundation chain. Now you see we have a chain on our hook. We're going to go ahead and do that another 19 times for a total of 20. So there's 1, here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, notice how so there's my chain of 20, and I can measure it if I want against my swatch and make sure that it's the same length. You can see here that my stitches are pretty consistent. They're all about the same size. And as I worked up, I moved my fingers up the swatch or up the foundation row to keep the tension. From here, we're only doing single crochet. So I'm just going to chain 1, which is basically turning our row. I'm going into what we call the second chain from the hook. So that's going to be not this one, but this one. And the reason that we go into the second is because I just made that. This is my turning chain. I'm going into that stitch with my hook, yarn over, pulling through. Now I've got 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to pull that working yarn through those 2 hooks. We're going to do that again all the way across. Take my hook that has the working yarn on it, going into that stitch, and you can see you've got your stitch here. This is basically the top and the bottom. So you can go into both if you want, but usually on a foundation chain, I just go into the back loop. So this is your back loop, this is your front loop, and then this down here is your third loop or the base. We're just going into the back loop. So we go right in there. Now we have the 2, we yarn over, we have the 2, and we pull through with the working yarn and go all the way through. So we're going to do that all the way across. So we should have 20 on our hook. Now, because we're only doing a single crochet, we don't yarn over going into the stitch only once we're in the stitch. So again, we go into the stitch, no yarn over. Now we yarn over, pull that through with those 2 loops, and we go through. I'm doing this in US terms. If I was doing UK terms, this would actually be called a double crochet, which can be confusing. The reason they call it that is because in the UK, they count the number of loops on the hook during the stitch. So right now there's 2, but we're calling it's actually a single crochet, meaning we're just doing the 1 stitch. So once again, we go into the loop, that's the back loop, yarn over and pull it through. Go into that back stitch, yarn over, pull it through. We've got those 2 loops, and we finish it off by yarning over. And once again, holding your yarn, you can see I'm holding my work with my thumb and my finger, and then my forefinger is keeping the yarn tension. And that's just something that you're going to have to get used to. Some people are loose crocheters, some are tight. You'll find your own rhythm, and you'll find your own gauge and your own tightness. But the idea, the goal is you want your stitches to be consistent in size. So this is our single crochet. It is one of the easiest foundation rows for pretty much any project you're going to be doing. You're probably going to be doing a single crochet somewhere. So it's probably the most important stitch that you can learn and master. So now we've got our 20. And if you want to, you can always just double check and count your stitches. Remember, we started out with that working chain. So it's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and now we have 20. So we counted across. If you think you're going to get confused, one thing that I find that really helps is to put a stitch marker where your stitches start. And that will keep your rows nice and straight. So I put one down here at the end. Now I'm going to turn my work. And you can see here is the top of my stitches. So once again, there's the back loop, there's the front loop because it's the one closest to you. And then this down here is technically it's like the 3rd loop. We're just going to be going into the top 2 stitches right here. Now, because we're going into a double crochet, we're going to yarn over first. We're actually going to do 2 single crochets in this stitch. So the first thing you're going to do, we're going to chain 2, because that's going to be my turning chain. And the reason we're chaining 2 is because we're doing a double crochet, and we want this turning chain to be the same height as the double crochet. So now I've done those 2, but remember, those are not going to count towards your 20. My 20 go from here to here. From here, you're going to yarn over, then you go into your stitch, and you basically go just under those 2 loops right on top. So you can see those 2 loops are right there. Yarn over. Now you've got 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, which leaves you 2 remaining. Yarn over, and you pull through the remaining 2. We're going to go ahead and do that again 19 times. So we're going to hold the work between the thumb and the finger, keeping the yarn nice and tight with the forefinger. Yarn over to start the stitch. Go into the stitch. So I've got both the front and the back loop on my hook, bringing it through. Now I've got the 3 yarns, or the 3 loops coming through, yarning over, pulling through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2 again. Here we go. Through the working yarn, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Yarn over first, coming underneath those 2 stitches, yarn over, and yarn over. I really like to use charts, and the reason I like to use charts is because if I find a pattern that I want to use, it's possible that maybe the instructions are going to be confusing, or maybe the pattern writer, English is not their first language, and so the wording might be a little confusing. So if I have a chart, the charts are universal, meaning no matter what country it comes from or who writes it, the symbols that represent each one of the stitches are universal. So here you can see these are the international crochet symbols, meaning anytime anyone's going to be writing a pattern, they're going to be using these stitches. Now, the first thing we did was the foundation chain. We chained across 20. That's the universal sign for chain. The second thing we did was that single crochet, which is the SC as the abbreviation, and it's just a plus sign. The next thing we did was the double crochet, which is what we're doing right now. And then it goes on and through. We'll continue to use this as we go through our Basic Crochet 101 series. So right here, we've got that solid single crochet. Here you see we have those foundation rows. We did 20. Then here, we've got those single crochets. And that just tells me how many across. So if I'm doing 20, there's going to be 20 of those crosses. Next, we're going into the double crochet, which is right here. So here, you can see this is the chart for the double crochet. You'll see here we've got our foundation chain. You see here how we chained up. Now they chain up 3, I chained up 2. It just depends on the size of your stitches. Here it tells me this is a double crochet and how many stitches across I'm going to be doing. So using this chart, we're going to continue to do this row. We're going to yarn over, go underneath those 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through, and yarn over and pull through. Coming up towards the end of this row, you can see I'm holding my yarn, my work between my thumb and my forefinger or my finger, and then I'm using my forefinger and my pinky for my tension. I yarn over, go into that stitch, pull it through. We've got those 3, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Keeping a good tension in your work is probably going to be the most important thing that you can do and learn when you're crocheting. Now here you can see I kept my stitch marker, so I know that this is my last stitch. Yarn over, come into that stitch, and pull through. And now I have my first row of 20 double crochets. That's the chart. This is what it's going to end up looking like. Now I'm going to chain 2 to come out of this. Here it shows, basically it's showing that you're chaining 3. This is your turning chain, and then this is your foundation row. Now, in subsequent rows, that foundation row is going to be a double crochet. So now I'm chaining up, turning my work, yarning over again, and I know that I'm going into this stitch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move my stitch marker up to that row so I know exactly where it's supposed to end, and I just clip it right into the stitch. This just helps me to keep my stitch row straight. As a matter of fact, I'll put a stitch marker at the end of my row as well. So I know my row ends right here in this stitch, and I'm just going to go ahead and clip it right in. And we're just going to keep doing these double crochets until we get to our desired length. So here you see we're finishing out this row, and there's this one more stitch right here that I got my stitch marker in. Sometimes they're a little hard to find, which is why it works really well just to mark it with a stitch marker. We're going to do that, and we're going to finish out this row. Then we're going to go ahead and chain 2. We turn our work, and then we're just going to keep on going to whatever length you choose. Okay, so what I'm ultimately making here is 2 pockets for a sweater. So that's what I want them to be, about the same size. And these are, again, this is the one that we're working on. This is my 20 foundation chain across. We started with a single crochet. We did double crochets all the way up. And now what I'm going to do is we're going to go back to that single crochet just to kind of finish off the top. But I'm going to show you how to do a back loop single crochet. So I'm going to double check my work. So I know I have 20. Now because I'm doing that single crochet, I'm only going to chain 1, not the chain 2, because remember I want the height of my stitch. Now, and I'm not going to yarn over because I'm doing just the single crochet, but what I am going to do is, remember here on the top of our stitch, we have our front loop and our back loop. We're only going to go into the back loop on this stitch. So you can see the back loop is right there. I go in, make sure my yarn's nice and tight, I yarn over and I pull through. We're going to continue doing that all the way across just to give it a little bit of an edge to it, a little decorative. And I always like to finish off my work with a single crochet. It just gives it a nice finishing look. So here again, we're going into the back of that stitch. You can see that, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through. Right there. So again, this is our single crochet, but we're doing the back loop only. If we were going to do the regular single crochet, I would go into both loops just like that and pull them both up. But I'm just doing the back. I'm going into that back loop, and the back loop is always going to be the one that is the farthest from you. I'm going to count my stitches one more time. I know I have 20, so now I'm just going to go ahead and finish it off. I'm actually going to give myself a really long tail on this because I'm going to use it to sew this pocket onto my other piece. But normally, if that's not what you're going to do, you want to give yourself a length of maybe like that long. You're going to take that, you're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull that tail just all the way through your work. So now that I pulled it through, you just want to pull it nice and tight. And there you have it. So here we did our foundation chain across. We did our single crochet. We did double crochets all the way down. And then we finished off with a back loop single crochet. And you can see how we got this little decorative edge right there.